In 1971, Iran celebrated 2,500 years of continuous monarchy. The Shah hosted the most expensive party in human history at Persepolis. Estimates put the cost at over $200 million at the time. Guests ate off fine English china beneath silk tents flown in from Belgium, with master chefs flown in from Paris. Iran was hailed as an island of stability in a volatile Middle East, America's closest, most heavily armed ally in the Persian Gulf. 8 years later, in 1979, that invincible monarchy was completely gone. The army had melted away, and a 77-year-old religious cleric living in exile in a Parisian suburb returned to Tehran to a crowd of 1 to 5 million people, one of the largest gatherings in human history. How does a seemingly untouchable empire collapse in less than a year? This is the story of the Iranian Revolution, a storm of rage, faith, and crowds so massive they broke the will of a superpower's closest ally. The year everything changed. To understand the revolution, you must first understand the man at its center, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. He came to power in 1941 after his father was forced to abdicate following the Anglo-Soviet invasion of Iran. During his early reign, he was a relatively weak monarch, overshadowed by powerful politicians. But after the CIA and MI6-backed 1953 Iranian coup d'etat overthrew Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh, the Shah emerged as America's closest ally in the region. In 1963, he launched the White Revolution, a sweeping package of land reform, women's suffrage, literacy campaigns, and rapid state-led modernization. After the 1973 oil boom, soaring oil revenues allowed him to expand these reforms dramatically. The White Revolution transformed everyday life. Literacy more than doubled. Millions of children entered new schools. Women gained the right to vote and hold public office. And oil wealth funded highways, universities, hospitals, and factories. Tehran rapidly evolved into one of the Middle East's most modern cities, while a new urban middle class emerged alongside Iran's expanding economy. But the Shah's modernization also came at a heavy political and social cost. His secret police, SAVAK, was established in 1957 with CIA and Mossad help. By the 1970s, SAVAK had grown into a shadow empire of thousands of full-time agents and informants. They arrested, tortured, and executed political opponents, Marxists, Islamists, nationalists, and anyone who whispered dissent. The religious establishment, led by an exiled named Ruhollah Khomeini, called the Shah a puppet of the American devil. Khomeini had been exiled in 1964 after denouncing laws that gave legal immunity to U.S. military personnel. He settled eventually in Iraq and later in a quiet suburb of Paris, Nofley-le-Château. Here, the French government had granted him political asylum. France gave Khomeini complete freedom to sit in Paris and give interviews to international journalists from around the world, hold press conferences, and record his voice to send back to Iran. Paris had become his global headquarters. But the question is, when the Shah had imposed a complete ban on the media inside Iran, how was Khomeini's message reaching every corner of the country? The answer was the BBC. During those days of the revolution, the ordinary people of Iran relied on the BBC Persian radio service for their news. Every day, the BBC broadcasted detailed reports of Khomeini's activities, his statements, and his next steps. The impact was that people all over Iran knew exactly when and where the next protest would take place, right from their homes. This radio service essentially became the communication network of the revolution. It got to the point where the Shah's furious supporters sarcastically nicknamed the network Ayatollah BBC. And the ordinary people? They were caught in the whiplash. The rich got richer. The rural poor saw their traditions upended. The new middle class saw their democratic aspirations crushed by SAVAK. By 1977, Iran was a powder keg. The Shah ignored the warning signs. He believed his army of 415,000 men and his American fighter jets could crush any uprising. But he had forgotten one thing. Armies cannot fire into a million faces forever. The physical uprising began in early 1978, when seminary students in the holy city of Qom flooded the streets in an anti-government protest. Security forces opened fire, killing several young students. According to Shia Islamic tradition, there is a mandatory 40-day mourning period for the dead. 40 days later, protests erupted again in Tabriz to mourn those students. More died. Another 40 days passed. More protests. The cycle became a machine, a relentless drumbeat of death, mourning, and escalating defiance. By August 1978, the protests had spread to every major city. Then came the spark that lit the country on fire. The Cinema Rex in Abadan was set ablaze, and over 400 people were trapped inside and burned alive. The public immediately blamed SAVAK, while historians today link the arson to radical Islamist militants framing the regime. At the time, the rage was absolute. The Shah imposed martial law. On September 8, 1978, known as Black Friday, soldiers fired directly into a massive crowd in Tehran's Jaleh Square. The image of unarmed civilians being shot down by American-equipped soldiers was seared into the national consciousness. In December 1978, during the holy month of Muharram, over 2 million people marched through the streets of Tehran. They chanted Allahu Akbar from the rooftops every single night. The army began to fracture. Soldiers refused orders, tore off their uniforms, and joined the crowds. The Shah had lost the street. He had lost the army. And his closest ally, U.S. President Jimmy Carter, was deeply torn between supporting a dictator or advocating for human rights. On top of it all, the Shah was secretly dying of cancer, rendering him indecisive and paralyzed. On January 16, 1979, the King of Kings walked onto the tarmac at Mehrabad Airport. Weeping, he took a box of Iranian soil, boarded his private jet, and flew into permanent exile. Khomeini's return was like a conqueror's triumph. On February 1, 1979, he landed in Tehran aboard a special Air France Boeing 747, provided with complete protection by French security. To the world, this was a massive grassroots revolution. But behind the scenes, something else was unfolding that no one knew about. In early January 1978, commonly cited as January 7th, an article was published in Etalat, Iran's oldest official state newspaper, that shook the entire country. In this article, the Shah's regime officially accused Khomeini of being a British agent whose sole purpose was to destroy the nation. Although the revolutionaries dismissed the article as a malicious conspiracy, triggering those first bloody protests in the holy city of Qom, this official state news actually laid the groundwork for a hidden web of political maneuvering that would later be proven true. In 2016, the U.S. government and ABBC Persian investigation made highly classified secret documents public. According to these declassified cables, while living in Paris, Khomeini had indeed established a secret back-channel communication network with President Jimmy Carter's administration. Khomeini assured the Carter administration, "If you quiet the Shah's military and prevent them from staging a coup, I will not harm American interests in Iran." Terrified of a communist Soviet Union taking over Iran in the wake of chaos, the U.S. believed Khomeini's assurances. The United States advised the Shah's military leadership to remain neutral. Consequently, on February 11, 1979, the High Command declared absolute neutrality. The 2,500-year-old monarchy had fallen, but the moment he stepped foot in Tehran, Khomeini adopted a foreign policy that would permanently jeopardize the regional supremacy of both Iran and Iraq. In March 1980, Khomeini officially announced the policy of export of the revolution. He called upon the ordinary citizens of Iraq and its border regions to overthrow their government. This official state propaganda and aggressive rhetoric deeply alarmed neighboring Iraq's president, Saddam Hussein. However, the primary catalyst that transformed this regional tension into a horrific all-out war was the internal military purge taking place within Iran. Following the revolution, Iran's new government initiated a systematic execution of the old, highly trained professional military command chain from the Shah's era. Hundreds of top commanders, including General Nematollah Nasiri and General Mehdi Rahimi, were executed in broad daylight by state order. Thousands of the country's finest fighter pilots and military officers were summarily dismissed. Declassified Iraqi intelligence reports prove that Saddam Hussein witnessed an Iranian military that had completely lost its institutional cohesion and was utterly vulnerable. Saddam saw this as a golden opportunity to launch an invasion. In September 1980, Iraq invaded Iran. This marked the beginning of the longest and bloodiest conventional war of the 20th century. Yet the true historical reality of this conflict lies in the calculated double game played by global superpowers. France, the very same France that had previously granted Khomeini political asylum in Paris and allowed him absolute freedom to leverage the international media, was now supplying Iraq with its most modern super-étendard fighter jets and Mirage planes to systematically crush Iran. Britain and the United States. While the United States publicly maintained a facade of absolute neutrality, the CIA was secretly providing Iraq with high-resolution satellite imagery and critical data on Iranian troop movements to launch targeted strikes. And the most shocking official state reality? During this exact period, a secret backroom deal took place known as the Iran-Contra affair. Behind closed doors, the United States secretly sold anti-tank missiles and weaponry to Iran as well, ensuring the war would drag on, forcing both nations to bleed out and permanently surrender their regional supremacy. For years, Khomeini rejected every single ceasefire and peace offer, continuing the conflict until the nation was pushed to the absolute brink of collapse. This 8-year war claimed over 500,000 Iranian lives and buried the regional supremacy of both nations for decades to come. The prominent historian Ervand Abrahamian summarized the era perfectly. The revolution was a tragedy for everyone: the Shah, the liberals, the left, and even the Islamists, who won, but then had to fight an 8-year war and live under constant siege. The legacy of 1979 remains fiercely debated to this day. Was this a war for regional supremacy, orchestrated by foreign powers to neutralize both nations? Or was it an inevitable historical collision? What are your thoughts on these official Iranian newspapers and declassified documents? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. This is going to be a fascinating discussion. If you want to uncover the hidden turns of history, click the video on your screen right now for our next installment, The Fortress: Why Iran Will Not Back Down, where we look at how this regime managed to survive decades of war, sanctions, and isolation to build a modern military apparatus. Hit subscribe, and we'll see you there.